Hi, I'm David Spring with the Washington Family Rights Coalition, and I'd like to welcome you to our video on how we can win the war being waged against parents and children by what we call the trans drug cult. Our mission is to protect children from state-sponsored child abuse by informing and empowering parents. We need to protect families because families are the fabric from which our communities are made. To protect families, we need to protect the relationships between parents and their children. Family rights include not only the right of parents to guide their children, but also the right of children to be guided by their parents. We believe these essential family rights are God-given, inalienable rights. Our goal is to build an enduring movement to restore and protect these essential family rights. To build our family rights movement, we offer family rights newsletters, video conferences, community forums, and educational videos. We also teach courses on how to start your own pro-family news website. We've also filed several federal civil rights complaints. Our ultimate goals are to pass a comprehensive family rights initiative and train pro-family candidates to replace the crazy cult in Olympia. We post a weekly series of family rights newsletters to keep our members updated about the latest events in our ongoing legal battle to restore family rights here in Washington State. Here are 10 of our recent family rights newsletters. We also host weekly family rights video conferences every Sunday. We also hold family rights forums all across Washington State. If you'd like to host a family rights forum at your church, library, community center, or civic organization, send us an email. We're also creating a series of family rights videos like this one to help parents better understand the war being waged against them and their children by the trans drug cult. These are 4 of our most recent family rights videos. Now, we also offer courses on how to build your own pro-family rights community news website. You can sign up for our next course by filling out the form on our website. We've also filed several family rights complaints with the U.S. Department of Justice. These include a 99-page Title IX girls' rights complaint, a 65-page Title VI DEI complaint, and a 52-page FERPA parents' rights complaints. All of these cases are currently being investigated by the Department of Justice Task Force. Our long-term goal is to pass a comprehensive family rights initiative that goes far beyond the parental notice initiative recently gutted by the legislature. Our family rights initiative includes 4 essential parents' rights. First, the right to be told the truth about what is happening to their child when their child is at school. No lies, no secrets. Second, the right to be involved in any educational or medical decisions affecting their child. Third, the right to opt their child out of any program the parent finds offensive or harmful to their child. Fourth, the assumption of being a fit and caring parent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Our Family Rights Initiative also includes 6 essential children's rights, including the right to be told the truth, the right to privacy, the right to counseling, the right to fair sports, the right to a good education, and most important, the right to parental guidance. Our Family Rights Initiative also repeals several of the worst anti-family laws passed by our anti-family legislature during the past 10 years. Our ultimate goal is to replace the trans drug cult in Olympia. They are not only out of control and out of touch, but they're out of their minds. Our plan is to build a statewide family rights movement and a network of pro-family news websites in the next 3 years, so we'll be able to gather the 400,000 signatures and pass our family rights initiative and replace the trans drug cult in the 2020 election. The trans drug cult is a cult because it is based upon a pack of lies, and it is getting thousands of our kids addicted to toxic trans drugs. The harm of this cult includes not only getting kids addicted to drugs, it's also a war against the right of our girls to have their own bathrooms, locker rooms, and sports leagues. In 2024, a boy pretending to be a girl won our girls' state track championship by over 30 yards. In 2025, this same boy, still pretending to be a girl, defeated 7 more girls to win the girls' state track championship for the second year in a row. Another boy pretending to be a girl defeated 6 girls in a regional championship. One of those girls is a member of our Title IX Girls' Rights complaint we filed against Chris Reichel and Bob Ferguson on February 28th. But the trans cult is more than just a war against girls. It's also an information war driven by drug corporations who control the lying legacy media, who then use trans cult propaganda to fool parents into getting their own kids addicted to toxic trans drugs. It is also a war between truth and lies, with kids, parents, and teachers caught in the middle, not knowing who to believe. All of us are literally swimming in an ocean of lies where the real truth is often the exact opposite of what we're told on TV. It's also a war between real science and fake science. Real science seeks the truth by encouraging debate, while fake science hides its lies by not allowing debate. On a deeper spiritual level, it is a war between good and evil, and right now, evil is winning. In 2017, my daughter and all of her friends were harmed by this cult when her school was forced to allow boys in the girls' bathrooms and locker rooms. I have a degree in science education from Washington State University and a master's degree in child development from the University of Washington. I spent 20 years teaching courses in problem solving at Bellevue College. I promised my daughter I would put an end to this evil cult. I spent the past 8 years fighting to restore family rights in our state. I'm hoping that after watching this video, you will consider joining our cause. You can learn more about our plan to protect parents and kids by going to our website, WashingtonFamilyRightsCoalition.org. The first step in winning this war is learning about its causes and solutions. This involves 4 problems, including the war against parents, the war against children, the war against counseling, and the war against taxpayers. We will then review 6 solutions. These include joining the rest of the world in fighting back against drugging kids, exposing the leaders of the trans cult, enforcing federal laws, passing our Family Rights Initiative, replacing the crazy cult in Olympia, and building community news websites to better inform voters about the crimes being committed against families by the crazy cult in Olympia. The first problem is the trans cult war against parents. Parents have been falsely labeled domestic terrorists simply for speaking out at school board meetings. Trans cult school policies that force teachers to lie to parents are extremely harmful to parents and their kids. This includes Washington Policy 3211 that requires teachers to lie to parents, and House Bill 1296 that gutted our Parents' Rights Initiative. Telling kids that they cannot trust and should lie to their parents undermines the relationship between parents and their kids. State policies that harm the relationship between parents and their children are so severely harmful to child's development that they should be called what they are: state-sponsored child abuse. We parents have a right and even a duty to protect our kids from those who would destroy their innocence and exploit them for their own radical political agendas. The second problem is the trans cult war against our children. As most parents know, young children frequently engage in magic thinking, where they pretend to be a bird or a fairy princess. Children also have a natural tendency to believe that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. This is why it's common for kids to fear growing up and wish they were the other gender. These vulnerable kids are suckered into the trans drug cult by their teachers lying to them and telling them that all they have to do to change their sex is change their names and pronouns. This image is from an actual trans curriculum shown to first graders here in Washington. But kids deserve to be told the truth. It's not possible for a boy to turn into a girl or a girl to turn into a boy, no matter how many drugs they take, because as this graph shows, there are over 6,500 genetic differences between boys and girls. The colored bars confirm that these genetic differences affect nearly every organ in the body. These are images of the serotonin concentration in the brains of two boys compared to the brains of two girls. Serotonin is a stress-relieving hormone and neurotransmitter. Boys have much higher levels of serotonin than girls, which means that girls tend to be much more sensitive to stress than boys. This is only one of 6,500 huge differences between boys and girls. This is a graph of the concentration of another brain chemical, comparing hundreds of young women to young men in college. Note that there's no overlap between males and females. The authors of the study stated what is going on in a woman's brain is significantly different from what is going on in a man's brain. These four graphs of 100-meter, 200-meter, 400-meter, and 800-meter races all confirm that boys are significantly faster than girls, and that this difference starts at age 7, many years before the start of puberty. Exposing young kids to trans cult propaganda is extremely harmful to their development because it sexualizes them and distorts their view of themselves and their relationship with others. Here's another slide from the trans curriculum. A very evil trans lie is telling young girls that if they like other girls, they must be transgendered, even though it's normal for young girls to form close bonds with other girls their age. This is a gingerbread trans cookie. Encouraging gender confusion is child abuse because it's another step towards getting a child addicted to toxic trans drugs. Here's what first graders are not being told about the drawbacks of changing their names and joining the trans club. The first toxic drugs given to kids who've been brainwashed by the trans drug cult are called puberty blockers. These drugs have serious side effects, including obesity, heart attacks, strokes, cancer, and suicide. The second batch of toxic trans drugs given to these kids are called cross-sex hormones. These drugs cause sterility nearly 100% of the time. A 30-year follow-up study of giving kids drugs and genital mutilation found that it doubled their risk of suffering an early death. Another trans cult lie is claiming that young kids can make permanent, life-altering medical decisions without telling their parents. In fact, young kids are not capable of understanding the serious consequences of long-term decisions. The third problem is the trans cult war against child counselors. Most gender-confused kids suffer from mental health problems well before their gender confusion. Numerous studies have shown that gender confusion is a mental health problem, not a physical problem. For example, a study of gender-confused kids in Australia found that 89% of them suffered from mental health problems before being given trans drugs, and 88% still suffered from mental health problems after 4 years of being given trans drugs. So giving kids drugs does not solve their mental health problems. In fact, drugs can make their problems even worse. A red herring is a false claim used to distract us from the facts. Some have falsely claimed that transgenderism is due to a person being intersex. However, a 2021 genetic study of more than 1,000 people who thought they were transgender found that none of them had a genetic abnormality, confirming that transgenderism is a mental health problem, not a genetic problem. A child's mental health problems are best resolved through counseling to help the child understand the underlying causes of their problems. A study of talk therapy found that 20 weeks of counseling reduced suicidal thoughts by 60 to 80%. Unfortunately, in 2018, the crazy cult in Olympia passed a law banning child counseling and requiring gender-confused kids to be given toxic trans drugs instead of counseling. Any counselor who wants to give kids counseling instead of drugs can be fined $5,000 and lose their license. Forcing kids to take drugs instead of counseling has been a disaster. According to a 2024 National Mental Health Study, Washington is now near the worst in the nation in kids suffering from depression and suicidal thoughts. In the past 8 years since Reichdal took office, the chronic absentee rate of Washington students has skyrocketed. With so many kids missing so much school, it is no wonder that over 2/3 of our kids cannot pass our 8th grade math test. In fact, during the past 8 years, our student math scores on national tests have declined more here in Washington than in any other state in the nation. To make matters worse, Washington students are forced to endure among the highest class sizes in the nation. We would need to hire 7,000 teachers just to bring class sizes down to the national average so struggling students can finally get the help they need. Washington has also seen a record drop in enrollment. Since Reichdal took office, parents have pulled a total of 91,000 kids out of our public schools. On May 1st, 2021, the National Institute of Health published a 409-page review of research on the trans drug cult. They concluded that there is no evidence that giving kids drugs instead of counseling had any benefits. Instead, there was a lot of evidence that trans drugs harm kids. All children should have a right to attend school free from toxic trans drugs and misguided teachers who lie to them and their parents. Next, we will take a look at how much drugging and mutilating thousands of kids will cost us taxpayers. Despite the amount of evidence against drugging kids, the trans drug cult continues to fool an ever-increasing number of troubled kids into joining their trans club. For example, in the Seattle School District, the percent of gender-confused kids has skyrocketed from 7% in 2009 to nearly 34% in 2021. The lifetime cost of 30 years of trans drugs and trans surgeries can range from $500,000 to $1 million per victim. So the total cost of getting 50,000 kids, or 5% of 1 million kids, addicted to trans drugs could be over $50 billion, all paid for by you, the taxpayer, through higher taxes and higher health insurance payments. Eventually, thousands of these kids trapped in a transgender nightmare will sue our state for lying to them. These detransitioner lawsuits could cost Washington taxpayers tens of billions of additional dollars. So what do we do? The first solution to this problem is to join the rest of the world in fighting back against the trans drug cult. While our state leaders double down on trans cult insanity, nations all over the world have banned giving kids toxic trans drugs. One of the first was Sweden in 2022. In 2023, Denmark concluded that giving troubled kids toxic drugs was a bad idea. They now recommend child counseling as more effective. Finland also concluded that giving troubled kids toxic trans drugs was a bad idea, and they also recommend child counseling as more effective. Norway also recognized that giving troubled kids toxic trans drugs was a bad idea, and they also recommend child counseling is more effective. France also recognized that giving troubled kids toxic trans drugs was a bad idea, and they also recommend child counseling is more effective. The French report describes sex reassignment in minors as one of the greatest ethical scandals in the history of medicine. In 2024, the United Kingdom not only banned trans drugs, but went even further to ban gender confusion curriculum, things like encouraging kids to change their names, from all schools in the United Kingdom. In December 2024, Italy joined the list of countries restricting toxic trans drugs and recommending counseling instead as safer and more effective. In April 2025, Belgium began an investigation of the trans drug cult after a study of 431 patients who were given trans drugs between 2007 to 2023 found that 5 of the 431 patients had committed suicide. The director of the Belgian Center of Evidence-Based Medicine stated that performing sex changes on children is an experiment without any scientific evidence to support it. Here in the United States, 27 states have now banned giving kids toxic trans drugs. Sadly, 13 states, including Washington, still require giving gender-confused kids drugs rather than counseling. The good news is that voters are starting to recognize the insanity of manipulating kids into changing their name and lying to their parents. A 2023 poll found that 66% of all voters support telling parents the truth. This even includes 65% of voters here in Washington state. A 2025 poll found that 79% of voters now oppose allowing boys in girls sports. These poll numbers are despite the fact that there are powerful groups, such as the Washington State PTA, lying to parents on a daily basis about why boys should be allowed in girls' sports. Imagine what would happen if every parent was actually told the truth about the trans drug cult. If we can find a way to get the truth out to the voters, it's likely that 90% of them would favor family rights. Which leads us to the second solution, exposing the leaders of the trans drug cult. Who runs this evil cult, and how can we stop them? This person's a good example. He's the leader of the Washington State Senate. When explaining why parents have no right to be told if their child is taking toxic trans drugs that will permanently sterilize them, he said that any 13-year-old has the right to make their own medical decisions without consulting their parents. Now, if there is any age in which a child is least likely to make good decisions, it's when a child is 13. In fact, this is the age kids are most likely to make bad decisions. Just ask any parent of a teenager. Another crazy cult leader is Superintendent Chris Reichel. He not only opposes parents' rights to make decisions for their kids, he's in favor of forcing teachers to lie to students, telling 6-year-olds that all they need to do to join the trans club and change from being a boy to a girl is change their names and pronouns. No mention to the kids that in addition to changing their names, they will need to take toxic trans drugs for the next 40 years and deal with tumors, cancers, strokes, and sterility. He also opposes the right of a girl to their own bathrooms, locker rooms, and sports leagues. By refusing to comply with Title IX, he's risking losing billions of dollars in federal funds. He's also in favor of racial shaming, harming white kids in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But this is a violation of Title VI, which protects children from discrimination based upon the color of their skin. Reichel has ordered every teacher in our state to lie to parents, but this is a violation of FERPA, a federal law which requires parents to be told the truth about what is happening to their kids when their kids are at school. Reichel is not only okay with teachers lying to parents, he's also obsessed with brainwashing children. Reichel is playing a high-stakes game of chicken, which could cost taxpayers billions of dollars due to his filing false Title IX, Title VI, and FERPA federal certification contracts during the past 8 years. Washington Governor Bob Ferguson is also a national leader of the trans drug cult. He's filed several legal briefs falsely telling federal judges that trans drugs are safe and effective. The third path to winning this war is simply enforcing federal laws. On January 9, 2025, in the case of Tennessee versus Cardona, a federal judge ordered every school district in the United States to comply with Title IX. Reichel refused to comply, falsely claiming the Washington state laws have priority over federal laws. But Article 6, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution clearly states that any federal laws, such as Title IX, have priority over any state laws that conflict with federal laws. So, on February 28th, the Washington Parents Network filed a 99-page Title IX complaint against Chris Reichle and Bob Ferguson for violating the Title IX rights of over 500,000 girls here in Washington state. On April 18th, we also filed the 64-page Title VI complaint, including 30 examples of flagrant violations of the Civil Rights Act that have occurred and are continuing to occur at our schools here in Washington state. On May 8th, we also filed a 50-page FERPA parents' rights complaint against Chris Reichle for violating the rights of parents to be told the truth about what is happening to their kids while their kids are at school. On July 9th, the Federal Trade Commission held a workshop on the dangers of getting kids addicted to toxic trans drugs. To watch the videos of their 12 sessions with more than 20 speakers, go to youtube.com and search our Washington Family Rights Coalition channel. Please like, subscribe, and share these important videos. The FTC also announced that they will be prosecuting the trans drug cults for committing fraud in misleading children into taking toxic trans drugs. The fourth path to winning this trans cult war against families is to pass our Family Rights Initiative. In 2023, nearly 450,000 voters signed the Parents' Rights Initiative. It was the fifth most signed initiative in Washington history. On March 4th, 2024, the legislature passed the Parents' Rights Initiative, but the only reason they passed it was to prevent it from being put on the 2024 ballot and to give them the right to gut the Parents' Rights Initiative in 2025. On June 5th, 2024, Reichle told school districts to ignore the Parents' Rights Initiative, falsely claiming it violated federal laws. In January 2025, a King County judge ruled that the initiative did comply with all federal and state requirements. In 2025, the crazy cult in Olympia passed House Bill 1296, which gutted the Parents' Rights Initiative. They think this battle is over, but we are just getting started. The crazy cult gutting our Parents' Rights Initiative can be a blessing in disguise, as it gives us a chance to pass an even stronger Family Rights Initiative to address all of the harms that have been inflicted on our families and our state during the past several years. The fifth solution to the trans cult problem is to replace the crazy cult in Olympia. The monstrous trans cult crime wave against federal laws and family rights brings up an important question. After committing 8 years of fraud against our families, our kids, and our federal government, how could Reichle or Ferguson have won the election in 2024? Their insane policies are opposed by more than 70% of the voters, but voters were never told the truth about their horrible trans cult crimes. There are at least 3 reasons the 2024 election turned out so badly for families in our state. We need to learn from these failures. It's we're to have any hope of winning the governor's race in 2028. The first problem was the conservatives spent more time fighting each other than they did exposing the crimes of their trans cult opponents. We need to stop giving Ferguson a free pass on his opposition to family rights and his support for the trans drug cult. We need to change from identity politics to issue-based politics, focused on helping families. We need to better inform and build relationships with independent voters. This is why we need to put a Family Rights Initiative on the 2028 general election ballot. We can use the 2024 election to determine how many independent voters we need to reach to win the governor's race in 2028. The math is simple. While Democrats outnumber Republicans by about 200,000, there are more than 2 million independent voters in Washington state. In the 2024 election, Ferguson won 54% of the independent voters, but most of these independent voters are parents. We need to change the minds of at least 400,000 of these independent voters to win the 2028 governor's race. So how can we inform and build relationships with 400,000 independent voters? The answer is by changing the way we reach out to independent voters. Here's why the traditional approach to influencing voters no longer works. No matter how many volunteers we get, 2 minutes at the voter store cannot possibly make up for 2 years of trans-cult brainwashing from the lying legacy media. Instead of doorbelling or wasting massive amounts of money on expensive mailers, we should invest our time building a statewide network of pro-family community news websites, each run by local citizens. Community news websites have the power to reach, by focusing in on local schools and sports, they can reach 10,000 independent voters. Our goal is to help folks start 40 community news websites in the next 3 years. The good news is that many independent voters have already figured out that the lying legacy media has not been telling them the truth. They are already looking online for alternative news websites. We simply need to build these news websites and readers will find them. I built one of the world's first online stores in 1994 and trained many of the people who built Microsoft.com and Amazon.com. Thanks to free modern web building tools, you do not need to be an expert to run a news website. If you can bake a cake, you can run a secure news website. We developed a 12-week course which covers every aspect of running a successful news website. Because we host these websites on our own servers, the operating cost of each news website is only $2 per month. So any ad revenue you get from local business sponsors can stay with the team running the local news website. We also cover how to enlist community groups to help you run and expand your community news website so that the amount of time needed by each volunteer might only be a couple of hours a week. If you want to help independent voters become better informed and end the trans drug cult here in Washington State, then take our course and start your own community news website. Each day, each of us is faced with a decision about the path we want for our future, the future of our family, and the future of our community. I hope this video will encourage more parents to join our cause and help restore the rights of families here in Washington State. It's time to get informed, get involved, and get to work. Together we can and will drive this evil trans drug cult from our schools, from our communities, and from our state. Thanks for watching and sharing this video. We look forward to meeting you.